The observation deck of the Galactic Naval Academy fell silent as the interspecies combat drill reached its conclusion. 47 cadets from 12 different worlds stood at attention, their various appendages, wings, and sensory organs focused on the training ground below. Captain Rhea had just disarmed 3 Kravatian shock troopers in under 20 seconds, moving with a fluidity that defied their understanding of human physiology. The Kravatians were not pushovers. Their species had dominated their home system for millennia, their exoskeletons capable of withstanding pressures that would crush most carbon-based life forms. Yet the human had moved between them like water, exploiting angles they didn't know existed, using their own momentum against them in ways that seemed to violate several laws of physics. "Impossible," hissed Cadet Giral, his translator struggling to convey the mixture of awe and disbelief in his clicking mandibles. "Humans lack our armor, our strength, our—" "Your arrogance," interrupted Instructor Velcora, the Thasian coordinator who oversaw the Academy's combat programs. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep consideration. "Watch her closely. She doesn't fight like prey trying to survive. She fights like a predator who's already won." Below, Captain Rhea stood in the center of the training ground, barely breathing hard. Her dark hair had escaped its regulation bun, and there was a slight tear in her uniform sleeve, but otherwise she appeared unaffected by the brutal engagement. The Kravatians were still trying to understand what had happened to them. That's when the alarm shrieked. Not a drill alarm. The cadets knew those well enough. This was the bio-breach siren, the one that meant something had escaped from the xenobiology labs. The observation deck erupted into controlled chaos as protocols kicked in. Emergency barriers began to descend. "All cadets, maintain position," Velcora commanded, but her voice carried an edge of concern that made several students' fight-or-flight responses activate. Through the reinforced glass, they watched as a small shape burst from the access corridor onto the training ground. It was roughly the size of a human child, covered in mottled gray fur that rippled with bioluminescent patterns when it moved. A Vorthax cub, one of the specimens from Dr. Kellen's behavioral study. The cadets knew enough about Vorthax to be terrified. Adult Vorthax were apex predators from a death world in the Outer Rim, capable of hunting in pack coordination that rivaled military strike teams. Their reflexes operated on a neural processing speed that made them nearly impossible to track in combat. They were one of 3 species the Galactic Council had classified as extreme threat, avoid contact. And now a juvenile, still deadly, still unpredictable, was loose on the training ground with Captain Rhea. "Get her out of there!" Someone shouted, but it was too late. The cub had already spotted her. What happened next would be discussed in xenopsychology classes for the next decade. The Vorthax cub's luminescent patterns flared bright blue, the color of excitement. The cadets would later learn, and it bounded directly toward Captain Rhea. Not with the stalking prowl of a hunter, but with the loping, uncoordinated enthusiasm of something else entirely. Every cadet expected the human to run, to fight, to do something that made tactical sense. Instead, Captain Rhea's entire demeanor transformed. Her combat stance melted away. She dropped to one knee, opening her arms wide, and her face split into a smile that conveyed more emotion than most species considered appropriate in a military setting. "Come here, my little monster," she called out, her voice carrying that peculiar warmth humans used for their young. The cub, Tavi, according to the frantic updates now flooding the observation deck's data screens, crashed into Captain Rhea with enough force to knock most beings off their feet. But the human simply caught the creature, laughing as Tavi's bioluminescence shifted to a soft golden glow, and the cub began, making a rumbling sound that the translator helpfully identified as contentment vocalization. "Captain." Rhea scratched behind the cub's auditory receptors with practiced familiarity. "There you are! Did you escape again? You're getting too good at that. She's—" Cadet Giral couldn't finish the sentence. "She's bonded with it," Velcora said softly, all 4 eyes wide. By the old ones, the human has pack-bonded with a Vorthax cub. The security team arrived then, weapons drawn but clearly uncertain. The team leader, a grizzled Kravatian veteran, approached cautiously. "Captain Rhea, please step away from the creature." "Stand down, Lieutenant," Rhea said calmly, not taking her eyes off Tavi. "This is my responsibility." Tavi's part of the xenobiology program's social integration study. She's been staying in my quarters for the past 3 months. Your quarters. The lieutenant's translator managed to convey his shock. Captain, that's a Class 5 predator. She's a baby, Rhea corrected, and Tavi chose that moment to roll onto her back, exposing her vulnerable stomach while her luminescence pulsed in lazy patterns. The human obliged with belly rubs. Vorthax cubs are highly social. In the wild, they're raised communally. Isolation causes severe psychological trauma. Dr. Kellen and I have been working on socialization protocols. The observation deck's silence was absolute. Every cadet was recording this moment, knowing their instructors back home would never believe it without visual evidence. But they're predators, Zeral whispered. So are humans, Velcora replied quietly. Perhaps that's exactly why this works. Captain Rhea finally looked up at the observation deck as if suddenly remembering her audience. She stood, and Tavi immediately positioned herself at the human's side, one paw hand reaching up to hold onto Rhea's hand in a gesture that was unmistakably childlike. Let this be today's real lesson, Rhea called up to the cadets, her voice carrying the authority of her rank once more. The galaxy will teach you to fear differences, to see threats in anything unfamiliar. But humans learned long ago that predators recognize predators. We understand the hunting instinct because we share it. And we also understand something else, that the fiercest creatures can also love, can also trust, can also choose family over instinct. She looked down at Tavi, whose luminescence had settled into a contented blue-green. Every species in this academy was once considered too dangerous, too alien, too different to cooperate with. Yet here we are, training together to defend a galaxy that belongs to all of us. Maybe that's the most human thing of all, not our ability to fight, but our stubborn refusal to stop seeing potential friends in everyone we meet. Tavi chirped and pressed closer to her human, and Captain Rhea smiled that warm, impossible smile again, even in little monsters. As security escorted them both back to proper containment, or whatever passed for it when a human decided to adopt something, the cadets remained frozen, processing what they'd witnessed. I will never understand humans, Zeral finally said. No, Velcora agreed, but there was something like respect in her multiple voices. But perhaps that's why they're winning.